May 15, 1918. A young Army pilot stands shivering in the dawn light at a muddy field outside Washington. His cargo weighs less than a suitcase, 140 letters. His aircraft is a wooden biplane with no radio, no lights, and no reliable way to predict the weather. These early machines were notoriously unforgiving, especially when conditions turned bad. If the weather worsened, officials advised him to land in a field and continue by train. The flight would last just 3 hours, but it would begin a transformation that reshaped the modern world. This is the story of how delivering letters created the airline industry. Welcome back to Aero History. In our first chapter, we witnessed humanity's first successful powered flight at Kitty Hawk. Today, we continue the story 15 years later. The Wright brothers proved that flight was possible, but now came the more difficult question: what purpose would it serve? Between 1918 and 1939, aviation evolved from a daring experiment into a global industry. This is Chapter 2, the birth of commercial flight. When World War I ended in 1918, the world faced an unexpected challenge. Thousands of trained pilots returned home, and factories were filled with aircraft that no longer had a clear role. At the same time, the United States faced a growing logistical problem. Moving mail across long distances by train could take days. The question became whether airplanes could move it overnight. The U.S. Post Office decided to test the idea. They hired former military pilots, used surplus aircraft, and began flying mail between cities. There were no airports-only open fields marked with arrows. Weather forecasts were unreliable, and navigation equipment was nearly non-existent. Pilots followed railroad tracks below them, which became known as iron compasses. The risks were immense, and early operations faced frequent setbacks. Newspapers even gave the pilots a grim nickname, reflecting how demanding and unpredictable the job had become. Many of these pilots were in their early 20s, flying under civilian conditions for the first time. Despite the challenges, the mail continued to move. Along the way, these pilots developed practices that became aviation fundamentals, including night flying, using ground beacons, early forms of instrument guidance, and the concept of flying on fixed schedules. By 1925, millions of letters were being delivered by air, but the service remained a government operation that struggled financially. That changed with legislation. In 1925, Congress passed the Airmail Act, allowing private companies to compete for mail contracts. Aviation suddenly became a business opportunity. Entrepreneurs were paid to fly mail, but only if they supplied their own aircraft, hired pilots, and maintained strict schedules. Mail revenue kept operations running, while passengers became an additional source of income. The first airlines reflected their ambitions in their names: Transcontinental Air Transport, Western Air Express, and Pan American Airways. Their aircraft were often modified military designs with limited comfort and significant noise. A ticket from New York to Chicago cost $250, equivalent to several thousand today, placing air travel firmly in the realm of the wealthy. In 1926, aviation gained new credibility when Henry Ford entered the industry. His company introduced the Ford Trimotor, known as the Tin Goose. Built entirely of metal and equipped with 3 engines, it was designed specifically for commercial use and could carry a dozen passengers in relative comfort. More importantly, it appeared dependable, helping to build public confidence in air travel. As mail revenue stabilized airlines, a new challenge emerged, convincing people to want to fly. In 1930, traveling across the country by train took 4 days, while flying took about 30 hours, but required multiple transfers and higher costs. Airlines needed to make passengers feel comfortable and secure. One solution came through service. In 1930, Boeing Air Transport hired trained nurses to assist passengers during flights. Their presence, uniforms, and demeanor were intended to reassure travelers and reduce anxiety. The approach worked, and passenger numbers began to rise. Technology provided the second solution. In 1933, Boeing introduced the Model 247, an all-metal aircraft with retractable landing gear and improved reliability. It significantly reduced travel time across the country, but airlines still struggled to operate profitably. That changed in 1935 with the introduction of the Douglas DC-23. This aircraft transformed commercial aviation. It carried more passengers in insulated, heated cabins and required fewer stops. For the first time, airlines could operate profitably by carrying passengers alone, without relying on mail contracts. The DC-3 became the standard for air travel, and by 1939, the vast majority of airline passengers worldwide flew on this aircraft. While American cities became connected by air, the oceans remained the greatest challenge. Early long-distance flights proved individual achievement, but not commercial practicality. Carrying passengers across vast stretches of water required a new approach. Pan American Airways found the solution with aircraft capable of landing on water. Under the leadership of One Trip, Pan Am built routes through the Caribbean and South America before expanding across the Atlantic and Pacific. These aircraft offered sleeping berths, dining areas, and refined interiors. The China Clipper, introduced in 1935, demonstrated that intercontinental air travel was achievable. For the first time, continents were separated by hours rather than months. By 1939, Pan Am operated scheduled services across both oceans. Tickets were expensive and limited to a small segment of travelers, but the global framework of commercial aviation was now established. As airlines expanded, three critical challenges had to be solved: safety scheduling and passenger experience. Systematic analysis of incidents led to better weather forecasting, improved training, and new technologies such as dicing systems. Scheduling complexities gave rise to air traffic control, beginning with the first control tower in Cleveland in 1930. Airports evolved as well, culminating in facilities like New York's LaGuardia Airport, which treated air travel as a structured and welcoming experience. Behind the elegance of early air travel was a difficult economic reality. By the late 1930s, competition outpaced demand. In response, the U.S. government established the Civil Aeronautics Board in 1958, regulating routes, schedules, and fares. This created stable legacy airlines and shifted competition toward service quality, comfort, and reputation. Business travelers became the most valuable customers, shaping airline strategy for decades to come. By 1939, commercial aviation had reached maturity. Passenger numbers had grown into the millions. Coast-to-coast travel became routine, international routes connected continents, and airports emerged as symbols of modern cities. Aviation had transformed from an experiment into an essential part of life. But change was coming. In Europe, rising global tensions began to reshape aviation priorities. Aircraft designs and pilot training increasingly reflected new demands. The final pre-war commercial flight landed on August 31st. The following day marked a turning point for the world, and civilian aviation operations were suspended as resources were redirected, yet the foundation remained. The years between 1918 and 1939 established the airline business model, created safety systems still used today, built the infrastructure that defines modern travel, and proved that people would pay to fly. Most importantly, they permanently altered humanity's relationship with distance. The pilots, engineers, and navigators of this era weren't just building an industry, they were building a connected world. In our next chapter of Aero History, we explore the most transformative period in aviation history, how rapid technological change during those years shaped the future of air travel. If you want to be part of this journey through aviation history, subscribe to Aero History. The story of flight continues with you.